This has got to be.
Before you go, remind me, give you 15 or 20 towels.
You're 6 gonna write that.
That was one word I forgot.
Hi, nice to meet you. Here, I'll just take this. Hi, I'm
right next door.
Paul's wife. Oh, nice.
This is the
We
ready
did banana bread. Many years we've eaten that banana bread.
Yes, we have had that.
We have the boat license now, so it's ready for this year.
Do I look better?
I have another one down in Boise, so I
say yes?
have to come down and get this one. That way, come down here and use this.
That one. What you hold this?
The bigger bowls are on the kind of a good place to put those things.
Oh, I know, yeah. And they're so big and unwieldy.
Stay away. I'm sick.
That's where I sleep. That's where I spend all night, right there. You're in my bed.
I don't think, and sometimes it is, but
Yeah, whatever. Who brought, is that what Moses brought?
I don't know.
I think he brought
There's a
that
card
apple.
there.
Huh?
There's a card.
That's how we're on here.
That's what put him in prison in the first place.
We have forks. Okay, there are forks.
That's exciting.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah, it's always got a good program in the church.
I will fight for the right, the something of glory.
Have you read that in the original language?
No, I haven't.
I did, because it was part of the BYU curriculum there, but.
That's. My motto is simplify.
Any of your kids coming up?
Well, this is it. We're gonna have Dennis and we figured
Dennis and Wendell,
with you, I mean, that was kind of, we're taking the best of the best.
Sort of.
Isn't that the way it works, Jared?
They're supposed to tempt me with my peers. My
Oh, you mean, so your wit
I
can be
always led to
spread?
believe that others with my age
Well, you probably have
Are you
kids
living in
down there
Salt-
like more than we get to.
Are you, where are you living these days?
Salt Lake,
Where?
next to the U.
You in South Salt Lake?
No, next to the U.
Oh, you're up on the,
Yep.
on the hill?
Yeah. University.
Yeah, you.
I actually right next to it, like I.
When you do slice off
University
the
Street.
size you think you
Next to the law.
can chew.
Yeah. I'm always cold.
Walmart?
You know,
Oh, no, I got it.
there's one I.
That's cute.
So it's over
Carry
here,
my
it's
little,
$25.
Wax tin.
How often you wax it?
Yeah,
4 times a day.
3 or 4 times a day?
Please
This
don't
is
show that to
maintenance,
Matthew.
isn't it?
Matthew will want one. Don't show
Well, it
him.
would cost you $44.
Oh, yeah, he's had a mustache. Does he still have a mustache?
He's had it
He's had it for a couple years.
But he hasn't grown handlebars?
No, he's gotta graduate first.
Okay,
He's
well,
at an institution of higher learning that has certain restrictions on facial hair.
The problem with me now is the hair that grows as fast as my body's my eyebrows and the ones in my ears.
Hey, we're doing it. You are shaving the unibrow one day.
let's,
Oh yeah, I have a unibrow all the time. I have one that takes a personal interest
let's
in
bring
making sure
back the
that
handlebar eyebrows.
it doesn't become unified.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You'd really be attracting them all.
Eyebrows, but fake
Cut 'em
them so
down.
that just don't,
Ellen too.
from now until the end of time.
Look at that. You can see.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's an awful picture.
Honey. I'll tell your mom. I was gonna turn it over to Dennis for an opening joke, but he said he's really not that funny.
Well, Dad was telling us last night, Janet and I, about a family that he has met the DI, that lives out towards Malta, on a place out there in the trailer, and it's a family that met in the DI that they've had over at the house here, and they're coming over again this next Thursday, who have 4 kids. And the oldest, you said, was 16, right? And they're vegetarians, they're not members of the church, and they've homeschooled all these years, but he says they're very clean, present themselves very well and everything. And it reminded me, I remember growing up as a kid, remember seeing Dad out there on the patio at nights, talking religion with people after we went to bed. I don't know if you remember that. You remember that, Dad? We used to sit out there, talk church to people.
To who?
I never knew who someone were. They'd come over and end up discussions about religion. I think some of them were even one time was even a minister or something.
Well, I remember.
This isn't repressed memory that's coming out.
Let me tell you the names of these children. We thought they were all girls, and found out only one of them was a girl. The oldest boy's name is Aspen.
Yeah.
The girl is Sequoia, which is the only name in the English language that has A-E-I-O-U in it. Sequoia. The next boy is River. And the youngest boy is Harold.
Harold, yeah.
Stick with those nouns.
Tell them why you thought they were all girls.
Well, because they all had long hair.
And they were all pulled back, the boys and the girl, with a bow on the back, and so was the father, and then Levi's and regular top, and you couldn't tell a boy from a girl.
So they're all young.
Anyway, I met him at the DI.
I went to California as a kid.
I didn't understand what word you're saying.
You went with your friend, the Clark fellow from Star Valley to California
You're early.
when you were 16 or
Well, see, I
well?
gotta tell you one more thing about this fellow
Oh.
first. He has a diesel actually. But anyway, built this body out of sheet metal for it, kind of like a Indy race car. And but we had planned on going to the World's Fair in '39 in San Francisco. And in this decided to build a sale with you, so I'm sure it's not stolen. Said it's stolen, you're kidding me. Why would somebody see something like that? Said, well, I won't give you the money unless you can get the sheriff to sell it. The road, as it left Wells, went under the railroad track. And so we walked out there and stood there with our thumbs. Just as it was getting dusk, the fleet of used to, there was only one paid person in the whole outfit. They were all driving these things just for the transportation. And there was a road for a while. They stopped and the head guy pointed somebody one of the crew.
We're man full grown.
Dad sent me to Chicago with a load of cattle to sell when I was 14. We went to Lindbergh through the ocean. There in the community, there was 5 houses.
Remember any of them? I remember a lot of them.
Yeah.
I remember landing out in the desert.
What?
I remember when we went out in the desert one time, landed with that air coupe you had with the reinforced gear,
Yeah.
and we get out and go
Was that
shoot
the
that
same
little
one?
22 pistol at rabbits.
You know, I could land some of the little airplanes just in the tracks of the pickup.
And I remember flying and chasing coyotes. You chased coyotes a couple times there with that air coupe.
Grown-up boys.
I remember landing out in Park Valley with that air coupe.
Park Valley, there's no landing strip out in Park
Well,
Valley.
there isn't.
There's not even a good road out in Park Valley.
Right on the road, taxied up to the.
You land on the road, taxi up to the church or something there and park it.
That's a felony. That's a felony, isn't it?
I just remember taking off, as I was taking off coming out of the Park Valley, there was a little hill and you couldn't tell if anybody was coming.
Oh,
And that air coupe had to get about 60, 65 miles an hour to lift off.
you know.
You didn't get clearance from the tower?
And Dad was
88.8
he
miles
was
an
dodging
hour.
the signs with the wingtips,
Oh,
the
my.
traffic signs.
Oh.
And we, I just remember that.
It would have been a lot better to fly down the hill, right?
Well, you took me up the day after the airplane crash at the Navion, you took me up the next day because you still had an air coupe. And we flew over.
You weren't traumatized by that crash then?
I was.
Not
Dad,
to
I think, was
mention
trying to
the
get
time
me
we
to
wrecked
over
in
it.
Iowa.
You flew the day after we got in that wreck?
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I didn't
We
know
went up in an air coupe and flew over Independence, and Dad was having me fly. And
Taking aerial photographs of the
I was
crash
at full
site.
throttle and the stall indicator was going off because we were in a wind deal where it sucks you down, and Dad just sitting there, you know, no big deal. I'm sitting there just, oh Lord, get me out of this. I'll never touch another airplane.
Have you?
Actually, the closest call I ever had in an airplane by far, don't you remember? I'm sure
You must have knocked your head.
Come on.
That's T6. That's
Is that the white one?
And,
I don't.
I asked for the weather, they said there's no big problem, but as we approached Cabot, it got lower and lower and lower until we were.
They tell it was a great
Wasn't it you that was with me?
No, it's Charles and Stephen, I think.
Was it?
landing in
Anyway,
fog.
and I had to go up in the,
Sorry, I wouldn't have let you out of the house.
No, Stephen tells that story very. He tells a Stibnite story about flying and being in trouble.
the airplane I got now, I'll never. Huh?
When you had that stagger wing, that was like flying in a Cadillac.
I scared Keith
I told somebody once
just
my
about
dad
to
had one of
death.
those, I said,
Keith caught him and taking lessons, and he thought he was a flyer. He was with him, he was going dog to
Kids, and at Helen's.
what do you mean, wee white man?
Yes,
White knuckle.
I flew back alone with you, supposedly to Burley. And that's when you fell asleep and had it on autopilot or something, and we ended up getting caught in a snowstorm. Was it Rock Springs we ended up landing on that
You-
cliff?
I think
You were
we
in
had
Rock Springs?
several.
Is it Rock Springs where we landed in that
Yeah,
snowstorm up on the cliff
No,
there?
not just one.
And hitched it right to town?
Yeah.
How do you overshoot Burley to Rock Springs?
I was flying.
I mean, that's a little bit of a miscalculation.
Well, that's where we tried to fly around the storm or something, I think.
This airplane that I got now. Anyway, when I approached Birdie, I tried to call on the radio, and
On Bench's lap.
is that right?
Ron Bench.
I was sitting, Dad was flying, and I was sitting in the co-pilot seat with Ron Bench in his lap, and I filled his hat full of
Barf bag?
barf
You became a
bags.
barf bag?
His hat was a barf bag.
When when I had a little go up and do some maneuvers.
Oh.
I took off this way on the runway 20.
Didn't get a picture of mine.
Before I got high enough to get out of the pattern, I looked back and he was green as grass. We hadn't even got our
This is a matter of
turn
civil
altitude yet. I just went right out around and come back and landed.
Yeah.
He got out and threw up all over the ground.
I remember
The machine gun in place didn't do
Just
it
the
for
thought of
the
him
fly.
being sick.
Fly
I
with his
was
brother-in-law
always sick
did.
in your
Hearing things
Sandy
like
wasn't so lucky.
Well, no, your dad wasn't so lucky.
Huh?
I didn't get out of the plane.
Is that right? Did you throw up at my airplane?
I did.
Yeah, it was all a brand new airplane.
It was
Flew
before we got
over,
married, so it was in spring of '75.
flew over Oakley, over the
What kind of
farm.
airplane was it?
Well, let me think. By the time you got there, it was
Four-seater.
went up and came
Four-seater.
down. Yeah, it was a four-seater,
It wasn't
yeah.
probably 172.
Well, Ann was with us.
Is it the one he crashed at the farm one time?
What kind of plane was that you turned upside down at the farm?
But another close call I had was an airliner ahead of us. Well, you don't cut in front of an airliner, do you? So he was just going around the field. So I followed him around. And so I buzzed the radio off several times, nobody come out. And pretty soon, it was so dark I couldn't see anything at all.
That's the appropriate time to
The
land.
car on Frank Ham was going,
That's Frank
and he
Ham's
saw
story.
this plane, I had running lights, he saw lit up.
Oh,
You know, when I was
Thank
going
you very
down-
much,
when I was
bro.
down there, and I saw those lights, so I just pulled up on the stick like this and plunked, and I was on the runway. But anyway, but if I hadn't seen those lights and the number on the end of the runway, why?
That story, I'd never heard of the whole detail.
I just remember when you used to
I'd
go
gone right
flying,
into the
that. I
bank.
used that in my
when Mom was
teaching.
working outside, when you was flying, you'd buzz the house, Forrest come get you or something, or fly underneath.
That's what he
it.
did in Emmett too.
We'd fly,
You know, I don't run the refrigerators. And Scotia, they have a whole a wall about half the size of that wall with 5 gallons, 4 high, no, higher than that, filled with all sorts of non-perishable foods, you know. Not the empty paint buckets like I use, but those that you buy. And, well, I don't know, they're just amazing. He's a woodsmith. He's as good a finished carpenter as I've ever seen, ever. And he was finishing up some cabinets for one of those mansions over at Jackson Hole. And,
Well, tell them why you thought they were all girls.
well, because they all had long hair.
And they were all pulled back, the boys and the girl, with a bow on the back, and so was the father, and then Levi's and regular top, and you couldn't tell a boy from a girl.
So they're all young.
Anyway, I met him at the DI and talked to him for about,
They came home and
Talked to
told me
for about an hour at the DI.
When they came, well, I thought they were
About
all
3
girls, because they all looked, every one of them looked the same.
Yeah, I
Mother
talked to
and the
him
father.
about 3 o'clock, invited them over to the house on their way home, and they didn't come, so we kind of forgot about them. About a week later, his knock come on the door one evening, and here they all 6 were. He come in and sang for over a half hour to us, songs that they made up,
They demonstrated it.
all
In
signed with,
unison, all of them, all of them,
all of them.
it synchronized, the little ones and the.
and they all songs they made up, and all of them were just scriptures out of the Bible. And
Out of the Old
they're about as versed in the Bible as our teenagers in New Guinea were. And they're all marked up, colors everywhere, and they're just really quite amazing. They don't particularly belong to any church, but they have a group they go with, I guess, once in a while. But anyway, just really quite an amazing family.
So that's his last missionary effort. I mean, his current missionary effort.
So anyway, they were going to come over on Tuesday, and he phoned last night and said they can't come till Thursday. But what happened when they were the first night they were here, I followed them out the car and I said, "You home teach your family, don't you, children?" And she said, "Yes." I guess figure that out. And I said, "I don't know." Well, then invite them to dinner, and I got dinner ready, and I bought some chicken, put it in the refrigerator, and you know, I had everything. And then they come in the door. I said, "Are you all vegetarians?" They said, "Yes." So I didn't let them know I bought some chicken. and then I went out to see them after that, and we're going to invite them for, you know, cake and ice cream and stuff. And Don Augie, you can allow your children to have sweets? Well, not really.
Live up towards
But anyway, my prediction is that, huh?
For homeschooling, but I
So you're
found
not
out
church of the firstborn or anything
she
like
taught
that?
them to read from the Bible. Can you imagine
They're never mainstream.
teaching preschool kids the Bible?
But anyway, but the boy says he's quite a chess player, and I guess the dad is too. So anyway, I went and bought a chess set the other day, and had Moses give me a couple lessons on it, so I can be a little bit competitive at least.
Well, you gotta be able to move 2 or 3 times before they checkmate you.
Huh?
At least show you can move 3 or 4 times.
Moses, what's this and what does it do?
Well,
You gotta have him come play Dennis, he's an old chess player.
well, I know.
You're funny, and you play chess too? Yeah.
He's a pro.
Hey Brandon, Dennis, why don't you should be right next to him on the bench, actually.
Anyway, this boy that's 16, he's building himself a little house, and you know, to be moved, and then he got it pretty well done. When
That's
I
where he's
Dave was
sweet.
showing me about it. Huh?
I met one of his friends at that's from Star Valley, said he went to California. You ever heard of him going to California? Dad, I wanna know how you managed to go to California as a kid.
I didn't understand what word you're saying.
You went with your friend the Clark fellow from Star Valley to
Oh,
California
You're
Yeah.
early.
when you were 16 or
well, see, I gotta
well?
tell you one more thing about this fellow
Oh.
first. He has a diesel pickup, and he makes his own fuel. He gets waste from a couple of the fast food places, and he has a system where he filters it and heats it and
Cooking oil?
cooking oil.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he has this big fancy
They have
four-door
this cooking
pickup
oil
that he
buses.
powers with this big
Does he pay
solid.
taxes on it?
I thought they should do
Well-
it every time.
How, you wanna know about Owen Clark and I?
Yes.
He and his wife sang in the Tabernacle Choir until they kicked him out.
Well, it's got 2 kids in it.
But anyway, and he said, but anyway, Owen and I kinda grew up together,
Reading is typical.
and I bought in 1938. It would have been 1938, 1937. I bought a 1928 Chevrolet 4-door soft top. Not a scratch on it,
Come sit with mom.
for $10. 9 years old. And it was a beautiful, nice looking car, but you know, teenagers. So but I took the body off from it, cut the frame in two, and put another transmission backward to that transmission. So I had so many shifts forward and backwards you couldn't even begin to imagine. And the ratio was such that we could go 30 miles an hour and the motor just going tick, tick, tick. Anyway, which was our undoing actually. But anyway, built this body out of sheet metal for it, kind of like a Indy race car. And we had planned on going to the World's Fair in '39 in San Francisco. And in this car. And so we had a little tent and our bedding and I don't know whether we had any money, much, either one of us. Enough for gas. Gas cost 10 cents a gallon or less. But anyway, we got as far as when we got, by the time we got to Wells, the bearings were going out of this motor because we was trying to run it to the highest gear we could run it in, and we didn't realize, you know, we was ruining the motor by straightening it. But anyway, when we got to Wells, it was rattling, and there were quite nice looking cars sitting all over town, people just abandoned, just left them. I'm talking about the Depression. Nice looking cars just abandoned everywhere.
So you just had
But we thought, well, we can get to, well, that was at Wendover.
Because of the gas.
Wendover. We thought we could get to Wells. So we figured we had enough gas to get to Wells and the thing felt help. So we headed for Wells. And we thought we should be about there, and we was going up this hill. It was just really rattling. And it stopped out of gas. But it had what we call a vacuum tank on it, which held 1.5 quarts. The vacuum tank instead of a fuel pump. So I crawled under it and cut the fuel line and drained all the gas, every ounce out of the tank, and had just enough to fill that vacuum tank. And we was on a hill, so we rolled it out of the hill until we got going again. When we got to the top of the hill, there was Wells in the distance, all the way downhill. We got to Wells about 2 o'clock, and found there was a junk dealer in town, and we went, looked up this junk dealer, and it had new tires on it and a new battery. And we found him and told him we had this card signed for junk, and what would he give us? Well, I guess I managed to give you $10. Well, fine, we'll take it. Where's the title? What the heck's a title? Never heard of such a thing. Loan a driver's license. He said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you can get the sheriff to sign the bill of sale with you, so I'm sure it's not stolen. I said, it's stolen? You're kidding me. Why would somebody say something like that? He said, well, I won't give you the money unless you can get the sheriff to sign it for us. Took us most of the day to find the sheriff. So just a little while before it got dusk, we got our $10. We took all our belongings, except what we could put in the bag,
put it on.
wrapped it in that tent, wrapped it with rope, sent it home, cash on delivery. COD. and the road, as it left Wells, went under the railroad track. And so we walked out there and stood there with our thumbs. Just as it was getting dusk, a fleet of used taxi cabs going from Chicago to San Francisco to Salve, and there was
What do you make of a story like that, John?
there was one pulling another. There were two. They were linked together, so they only had to have one driver for every two cars. But all the drivers except one, there was only one paid person in the whole outfit. They were all driving these things just for the transportation. And there was all there must have been 15 of these couples. And each one of them had a driver and two or three other bums. You know, people just for a ride. And one of them slowed down and waved to us, didn't even stop, you know, and opened the door and we jumped in. And I was just getting gas, so we went down the road for a while. And they stopped, and the head guy pointed somebody, one of them, a crew, 3 or 4 of them, to go to town and panhandle. And come back with whatever they could gather. They had some potatoes and carrots and some bread, and sit around this big fire. You know, there was about 30 people all together.
The gypsies.
And had this, well, all the next day, we got just about to Reno. And the same night, he had the crew go to town and panhandle, and made the big Mulligan stew, and we sat around and ate that. And there was one of those bordellos not too far away, a whole little town just outside of Reno. And the 4 or 5 of the people went over there. When they come back, one of these bums just really was a self-appointed preacher. He just preached them into hell and fire and damnation. You can't believe, you know, how this fire, you know, all these derelicts, and yet, so I knew we got about to Reno. It took us all the next day to get to San Francisco, about 10 o'clock at night, and they down to the docks, and they said, well, this far as we go. We jumped out, and I forgot and left my coat. I had a real only coat I had, and I had my suitcase though. But anyway, and I don't know whether we looked up my uncle Avery.
Yeah. Oh, Avery.
The name ring a bell? Avery.
Avery's the oldest.
Huh?
She's the oldest.
And she was married again.
She married
to
Owen Woodward.
what's her last name, Tony?
Lambert.
Lambert.
Yeah.
Anyway, we went and stayed with them for 3 days, and real nice people. Of course, they were old and older people by then, and went to the World's Fair. And I remember the World's Fair was on Treasure, what they call Treasure Island, there in the bay, and all the buildings were painted with pastel colors. Yellow and pink and all pastel, beautiful, light blue. But they glowed. The light, all of the ultraviolet light was shining on them, and they glowed. All glowed. It was a fantastic sight. Never seen anything like it in my life since. But I remember we went into this pavilion, this big kind of a atrium, and up here on the balcony there was a woman started to sing a song. First time I'd ever heard it, first time I'd heard a live opera singer. She sang that aria from Madame Butterfly. And it was just fantastic. I still remember her singing that. It's still one of my favorite songs to hear a good soprano sing. And so we stayed there for 3 days and started to hitchhike back, and it took us all day to get out of San Francisco before somebody picked us up. And then the second night we were going across Nevada, and a guy picked us up with quite a new car, a Chevrolet. And he turned on the radio, and I heard the song. First time I'd heard it, thought, well, that's a beautiful song, and that'll become a hit, you know. It was Judy Garland singing Over the Rainbow. First time I'd ever heard that song. Well, as it was getting daylight, we were approaching anyway, Owen, he didn't really have any family. He decided he wanted to go over to a certain mining town where he thought he knew somebody, so he got out of the car, and I didn't see him again for another 5 or 6 years after that. And I rode on to Salt Lake, and then I went down to the Salt Lake farmers market where there was always somebody from Star Valley there. You know, and found somebody from Star Valley, got a road to ride home, but it was really quite an adventure. With those old bums, that was really one of the great adventures.
Can you imagine your parents letting you do that? I can't imagine parents letting you do that. without knowing-
Well, God's sakes, we were 17 years old by then, or 18. Well, you read it.
We're man full road.
Dad sent me to Chicago with a load of cattle to sell when I was 14. If you haven't read that story about that, how I stopped in Laramie on the way, or Cheyenne on the way back to sightsee, I didn't stay. You remember reading that, Sandy?
What about your interest in airplanes? How did that start?
Huh? Oh, I made airplanes before I was old enough to go to school.
Was it because of Lindbergh?
Well, he was born with a flower in his mouth.
I made airplanes before I was old enough to go to school.
Too bad it wasn't a silver spoon.
Saved a
The
lot of
first
trouble.
event, the very first event I remember in history, where I can place it in time, was when Lindbergh flew the ocean. There in the community, there was 5 houses there in Lakeville, and Ray had a radio. There was one that had a radio, and he come and told. It had been in the papers, you know, all this for weeks about all these people. Well, a couple of them got killed, hadn't they? That tried it, and. But anyway, he come and said that he was over Newfoundland, and then the next day he come and said that he was in Paris, got made it to Paris, and of course there hadn't been any news. Even the man landing on the moon didn't get the publicity that in those days. And then of course years later, when they kidnapped
His daughter?
their child, and that was in the headline news for a year or so. And in fact, I've read several books about Lindbergh, and he was a conscientious objector, and Roosevelt hated him with a passion. He hated him as much as he hated Hoover. And
Franklin
but
Delano.
what nobody knew until after the war is that he'd gone over to Germany before the war, about 37.
Lindbergh had.
Lindbergh had, and Goring just showed him everything in Germany, bragging, you know. And so he warned the British of what was going on, and gave them as much information he could, and he was just the best spy they ever had by far, of what Germany had, and he actually flew combat missions in the Pacific, but mostly he taught the flyers in the Pacific how to get range out of their planes. You know, instead of the common way to in an airplane is to cut your power and slow the engine down. But he had them with high power but slow RPMs in their constant speed propellers, and to get anyway he increased the range of their airplanes by hundreds of miles in the Pacific.
You never hear about that part of him.
Do you remember any of your dad's airplanes?
Do I remember any of them? I remember a lot of them.
Yeah.
I remember landing out in the desert.
What?
I remember when we went out in the desert one time, landed with an air coupe you had with a reinforced gear,
Yeah.
and we'd get out and go
Was that
shoot
the
that
same
little
one?
22 pistol at rabbits.
Yeah, I could land some of the little airplanes just in the tracks of a pickup.
Oh, the hell
Often have.
And I remember flying and chasing coyotes. You chased coyotes a couple times there with that
remember
airplane.
that.
Grown-up boys.
I remember landing out at the Park Valley with that air coupe
Park Valley, there's no landing strip out in Park Valley.
No, there isn't.
There's not even a good road out in Park Valley.
Runs on the road, taxied up to the,
You land on the road, taxi up to the church or something there and park it.
you know.
That's a time for priesthood, that's a felony, isn't it?
I just remember taking off, as we was taking off, coming out of the Park Valley, there was a little hill and you couldn't tell if anybody was coming,
Oh,
and that air coupe had to get about 60, 65 miles an hour to lift off.
you know.
You didn't get clearance from the tower?
Dad was
88.8
was dodging the signs with the wingtips,
Oh,
the
boy.
traffic signs,
Oh,
and I just remember that.
it's been a lot better to fly down the hill, right?
Well, you took me up the day after the airplane crash of the Navion. You took me up the next day because you still had an air coupe. And we flew over.
You weren't traumatized by that crash then?
I was. Dad, I think, was trying to get me over it.
You flew the day after you got in that wreck? I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I didn't
We
know
went
that.
up in that air coupe and flew over Independence, and Dad was having me fly. And
Taking aerial photographs of the
I was
crash.
full throttle and the stall indicator was going off because we were in a wind deal where it sucks you down, and Dad just sitting there, you know, no big deal. I'm sitting there just, oh Lord, get me out of this. I'll never touch another airplane.
Actually, the closest call I ever had to an airplane by far, other than the ones I wrecked, was when John was coming, when we were coming back from Lovell. And we stopped at the Green River.
I was in the plane?
Don't you remember? I'm sure.
You must have knocked your head.
Come on.
That's T6.
Is that that white one?
And
I don't remember.
I asked for the weather, they said no big problem, but as we approached Cameron, it got lower and lower and lower until we were flying up the valley, and the airport is up on the bench and was up in the fog.
This is Charles and Stephen's story. They tell it with a great
Wasn't it you that was with me?
No, it's Charles and Stephen, I think.
Was it?
landing in there in
Anyway,
fog.
and I had to go up in the blind and make a turn and then come back and decide where the airport was, then go up over this and then after I got to it, anyway, and when I approached, when I got
He wear out, has he worn
He's
out?
worn
far
out.
from here to that house and been in the runway, I was that far off from being in it. So I just tipped it like that, and there were 6-foot drifts on the side.
the side runway.
If I'd heard all
There's
these
6
stories,
foot
I
there.
would let you
And there were
carry it out
snowmen
the
up there
house.
trying to
And I
jump
just
the
went like
wind.
that.
I'm pretty cautious, Hank, you hit under a table.
got away with it.
Mary is such a reckless.
Well, in that case, I'd known all those stories, I wouldn't have let you out of the house.
No, Stephen tells that story very. He tells the Stibnite story about flying and being in trouble.
The airplane I got now, I'll never take anybody with me. It's
The
a,
most enjoyable airplane I think I ever flew in was the Staggerwing,
huh?
when you had that Staggerwing. That
I
was like
scared,
flying in a Cadillac.
I scared
I
Keith
told somebody
Collins
once
just
my
about
dad
to
had one of those,
death.
they said,
Keith Collins had taken lessons and he thought he was a flyer. He was with me, he was going dogs and it was just over Thigh Call. I said, have you ever been in Tailspin? He said, no. So I told him, and it went like this. And I recovered and
You recovered, he never
he sat
did.
there tense and I said, guys, that was mild. And so I said, next time I didn't reduce the power, I left it full power and I jerked it like this and instead of going like this, it went like that. And he just started screaming.
well, Uncle Max,
Who's this poor soul?
Uncle Kay tells the story going up and the cockpit filling full of oil and then start coming down, he's trying to restart the engine.
What's that?
Uncle Kay tells about you taking him flying up near Stibnite, going straight up, and the cockpit filling with oil. And you're coming down trying to restart the plane.
No, that's.
Oh, he got out of the cockpit.
Dad, when we flew to Sacramento one time and dropped off the kids, Mom and a couple of the kids at Aunt Helen's.
What do you mean, wee white man?
Yes,
White knuckle.
I flew back alone with you, supposedly to Burley, and that's when you fell asleep and had it on autopilot or something, and we ended up getting caught in a snowstorm.
Oh,
Was it Rock Springs we ended up landing on that cliff?
You were in Rock Springs?
Is it Rock Springs where we landed in that snowstorm up on the cliff there?
Not just
And
one.
hitched the ride to town?
Yeah,
How do you overshoot Burley to Rock Springs?
I was flying.
I mean, that's a little bit of a miscalculation.
Well, that's where we tried to fly around the storm or something, I think.
this airplane that I got now has 110 horse, and the air coupe only had 75 or 85.
85.
So it's not a
But I won't take it in this
two-cycle,
airplane
two-stroke.
because it loves the ground too much.
But do you have a
It
license?
really
It
loves the
doesn't ask
ground.
my permission to buy
It's
planes.
a Beech too, which is a Cadillac of airplanes.
What do you mean it,
So what are you
what do you
gonna?
mean when you say it loves the ground?
It takes way too much runway.
Oh,
do you know your dad?
It's a little short, stubby.
it's hard to get off the ground.
No, it's short and stubby at all. In fact,
Well,
it looks like it ought to be quite, but it's just quite a
When I heard all
heavy
about
airplane, with that much horsepower.
Well, that short runway Burley.
It's quite a
always
fast
became
airplane,
famous
it
for
just doesn't like to get off the
with the
ground.
river and it always scared me to come over the river and then cut the engine and glide in.
Diane
I'm
told
sitting.
us.
Probably one of the closest calls I had to getting hurt in an airplane is after I had that staggering beach until a year or two later.
But she never was.
I wanted to take somebody to Stibnite, and Alma Mallard had
So that was a real flyer.
Sagaween he hadn't flown for months. Said, go take it, take mine. And so I parked up there at Shelley, I went up and checked it out and flew down, got my passenger, went to Stibnite. And when we got ready to come, while there was a storm coming in, we took off. And, when we was flying, we saw the lightning flash. We saw it. The lightning actually hit the ground and started a forest fire. We actually saw it happen. And I said, "Well, we better report that fire when we land." And so I came in, and there was a front coming in that I didn't see. Usually, you can see a front, a real bad one. I come in, approach the 2-4, which is coming from the east. And just as I was over the river on final, and I was probably 100 feet in the air yet, I hit that front and I just about went in clear inverted. Went past vertical, just like that. And I rolled it back and hit the throttle and pulled up the gear and went around and waited till I could see it go until it was out. I flew around for several minutes. Then when I come in on a completely different runway, I got it on the runway, went to use the brakes, it didn't have a brake in its name. Something had happened to them since I checked it out to take off. No brakes whatever. And so anyway,
Airport one.
and you lose all rudder control with that plane as soon as the tail comes down. So anyway, we veered off the runway and it stopped about 4 feet from the roof, from the fence. When it finally stopped.
No wonder the
Were you in the
chicken
plane,
didn't believe
John?
you when you're
And-
talking about
and-
that.
And anyway, when I could approach the birdie, I tried to call on the radio, and the radio didn't work. So I didn't report that fire, but by the time I landed and tied that airplane down, I forgot all about that forest fire. And that's the last time I flew at Sagaween Beach.
Well, I remember flying in that T-28 with, sitting in Ron Bench's lap.
Is that right?
Ron Bench.
I was sitting, Dad was flying, and I was sitting in the co-pilot seat with Ron Bench in his lap, and I filled his hat full of
Barf bag?
barf
You became a
bags.
barf bag?
His hat was a barf bag.
Well, years when I had a little two-place like a Cub, it was called an Interstate. Morgan was saying, he said, "Oh, I like to fly and I don't ever get sick."
Oh, those are fighting
So
words.
I said, "Morgan, let's go up and go flying then." So I said, "We'll go up and do some maneuvers." I took off this way on runway 20, and before I got high enough to get out of the pattern, I looked back and he was green as grass. We hadn't even got our turn altitude yet. I just went right out around and come back and landed.
Yeah.
He got out and threw up all over the ground. We didn't go
The
around.
machine gun that faced didn't.
Just the thought of
the
him
fly.
being sick.
Fly was all
sick.
good.
I'm hearing things like
Sandy
that.
wasn't so lucky.
Well, no, your dad wasn't so lucky.
Huh?
I didn't get out of the plane when
Is that right? Did you throw up in my airplane?
I did.
It was all brand new airplane.
It was
Flew
before we got
over,
married, so it was in spring of '75.
flew over Oakley, over the
What kind of
farm.
airplane was it?
Oh, let me think. All the time you got went up and
Four-seater.
It was a four-seater.
It was probably
Well,
117.
Ann was with us.
Is it the one he crashed at the farm
Golly.
one time?
What kind of plane was that you turned upside down at the farm?
But another close call I had was, I had what we called a cruiser. It was theoretically a three-place plane. It would look like a Cub, but
So you had
the
5
back seat
people
was
in
supposed to be
it.
wide enough for 2 people, although I never had 2 people in it. But I was taking Eddie Wilson, who was flying. And
That's an.
that's when we had an airline come into Birdie.
I remember that, you know, DC-3s?
A DC,
3.
Well, the
Three.
DC-3s
The
are
old
landing
DC-3.
and
there.
anyway, so we went flying, and it had no radio, of course. We went flying, and it was getting dusk. We come
Morse
into
code for-
land, and here come this airliner ahead of us. Well, you don't cut in front of an airliner, do you? So he was just going around the field. So I followed him around, and what had happened is that it was dusk, and by regulation, they cannot land after a certain time without lights on the runway. And he was waiting for the lights to come on.
Oh.
And I followed him around until it got completely dark. Then he went off to Twin. The lights never did come on.
Oh, is this
And
the Frank
there it
Hamill?
was
Now you can't see it.
so dark,
This is Frank Hamill.
no radio. And so I buzzed the radio shack several times, and nobody come out. And pretty soon, it was so dark I couldn't see anything at all.
That's the appropriate time to
The
land.
car on Frank Ham was going,
That's Frank
and he
Hamill.
saw this plane. I had running lights. He saw this plane circling, and he enough
Figured it
wire.
out.
He'd been, he didn't know who it was, but he stopped at some cars. And they came out, and I saw them lining up on the runway. Here's 2 here and 3 over here. So I went downwind. When I come back, there was 4 here and 4 here. So I let down over the first car, you know, and I let down, and when I should have got to the ground all at once, and the lights of the next car, I could see the numbers on the end of the runway.
Oops.
And I had descended below the ground level over the river, and they said that my running lights disappeared.
Oh,
The ones that were in those
my.
cars.
That is,
Somebody had stopped across the river
oh.
and let their lights on, and lined up.
Oh,
You know, when I was
Thank you
down-
very much,
when I was down
bro.
there, and I saw those lights, so I just pulled up on the stick like this and plunked, and I was on the runway. But anyway, but if I hadn't seen those lights and the number on the end of the runway, why,
That story,
man,
I've never heard of the whole detail.
I just remember when you used
I'd
to
gone right into
fly,
the bank.
that when Mom was working outside, when you was flying, you'd buzz the house, force come get you or something, or fly underneath.
That's what he did in Emmett too.
We'd
Oh.
fly, he'd fly underneath the hill and we could look down from the hill and see him, and Mom would go in the house. She wouldn't even want to be seen him flying. She would come out of the garden or wherever and go in the house.
Did you go pick him up?
Well, we tell Mom, Dad, at the airport. Of course, when we cracked up that Navion, Mom watched us take off between the 2 buildings and thought we were gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went home.
Where were you?
But then when I got home, they ran out and said, Dad's crashed your plane, and I didn't even know it. I know they were looking at
I just remember
strangely,
hitting
and
the
I
ground
drove
and then
out.
bouncing.
Well, we didn't bounce.
Leaving.
We hit the ground, we hit that railroad track with that tail.
Well, but we hit the runway before we
No,
hit
we
the
didn't hit the
road.
runway.
No, we hit the railroad.
We hit the railroad track with the tail of that airplane and it put us straight across that main, because it used to have the big hacks of the drop in the road all the time. And it was so low, it busted out the curb on the other side of the road. And you took out the fence there and ended up in that cornfield.
I just remember the moment
I had
after
Paul
the crash.
on my lap.
Yeah, I know. I lost my
Not for very long.
You had a bloody
You threw me
nose,
out.
didn't you? Yeah, I was sitting there waiting, I went in the crouch position and nothing happened, and I looked up and I hit the seat in front of me, I said, great. I'm the only turkey that gets. Well, we thought it was gonna. And I was prepared for 15 seconds, okay, let's see.
It seemed like, I just remember Dad said we're gonna crash. And I remember how calm it
Cute
seemed like he
letter to
was.
everybody
And
about
I remember the
what
last thing you did was retract the gear.
I had to include that
What?
in history.
You retracted the gear.
Yeah.
Because if you hadn't retracted that gear, that gear would hit that railroad track.
Yeah.
Tumble. But it was where it hit that tail, it slid this out right across.
Well, you
That
can
was a smooth
understand why I
landing right
never
through the
wanted
field.
to
Well,
fly.
don't you remember we had a hard time getting the canopy open? We finally got it open, I threw Paul out.
that was panicky.
And then that lady running the ass end of the state trooper there looking at the plane, they had to call the ambulance for her, take her to the hospital. And we're walking around looking at it, Dad's looking at it, and the guys are smoking a cigarette. And Dad turned and looked at him, and all of a sudden, boom! And one of the tires hadn't quite all the way retracted.
Tire popped. Everybody ran away.
I thought, Dad's gonna eat that guy's lunch. But then we had down here below the hill, well, we played on it for a year or two. That
The good
airplane.
news is that plane did have a radio,
Well,
right?
didn't you have an interest in doing up?
Yeah.
Well, see, I was,
It's been an interesting
that's what, I think that was
journey.
1968, because if I remember right, I was a senior in high school.
Somebody gave me a picture of that years later, I got a picture of it somewhere. I never took pictures,
We had a picture in the paper of it.
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's where it came from, I don't know.
Yeah.
We didn't even get interviewed though.
I
Of
did.
course, it was the time we landed in Iowa.
I just.
Gordon, one thing I remember about that, reporter talked to me and said, what was the cause of this wreck? I said it was a pilot error. And when it was in the paper, the cause of this wreck was pilot error, A-I-R. Pilot error.
Don't you remember reading the paper also, it said,
I smell
he
it.
interviewed one of the passengers, Gordon,
It's
asked him what he
gas
thought it was, and I said, I thought it was, we should have cleaned the frost off the wings. Because remember I said something about that, there's a little bit of frost on the wings, and when the airfoil, you said, no, I took off yesterday at the same time, and it wasn't a big deal.
But you didn't have more than 500 pounds in the
We're just
plane.
smelling smoke over here.
Closed
Do you
or
smell it?
something, that the smell's coming in here.
Well, the
What kind of airplane was it that you turned upside down
fire
at the
was
farm?
on.
Is that a
Yeah, we know.
What kind of airplane
Yeah,
was that at the
smelled it.
farm?
Super cut.
A Super
guys
Cub,
smell
that's
it?
what I thought.
It had, the reason I lost that, it had that tandem
It might
gear
be
in
coming
it.
out
It must maybe go in.
Didn't it snap a cable in it?
No, what happened, I know exactly what happened. On a short field takeoff, I pulled on half flaps,
Short field.
it pulled me off the ground. And I let go of the handle. Instead of catching like I was supposed to, I didn't have quite half flaps, didn't catch on half flaps. I let go of the handle, the flaps
Went full?
folded back up, and I lost some airspeed and hit the ground with just a little bit of a turn, and because it had those tandem axles, otherwise it would have just bounced, and I'd, you know.
Well, you didn't come home and
But
tell
it,
me all these things.
Huh?
I guess
Did you want to know all these things?
No, I probably would have aimed it dead away.
That was the night that Jen and I became engaged. Sitting right there at that table.
I think they lined up.
Dad came in with a bloody nose and blood across his face.
I
I looked at Janet and I
Did I get
said,
bloody nose? I
Welcome to the
don't,
family, Janet.
and a cut in your forehead or something.
I don't remember that.
And I told Janet, I says, this is not gonna be a good day to stay home.
I don't remember getting the
Well, that's how come I knew you had something happened to you, because you had blood on your face before you even told us you cracked.
Carl Williams was with
I just wonder if
me,
just the wind maybe
died
pushed it
here.
or something.
So this airplane.
Well, no, he died over a year
Said,
ago.
"I will never
His
fly."
widow had died a couple of, he was buried her the day after
just
he was buried.
repairs them.
In fact, when I cut out Katie's obituary, Donna's Williams was on the other side, just exactly.
Makes me want to go out and buy an airplane.
Well, I'll tell you who I ran into the other day was
All the fingers.
Burl Chesley's grandson.
Grandson, huh?
Grandson, he was out at the prison speaking as a speaker from one of the wards in the States.
Oh,
He said, well, that's name's Chesley. And I said, well, Chesley, are you originally from Burl? Well, yeah. And I said, Burl? So he's my grandfather. I said, well, who is your dad? Is it Larry? No, it wasn't Larry. I said, well, I've read your uncle's
Mike?
book, 7 Years in Hanoi,
Yeah.
and I had quite a good conversation with him.
Yeah, he gave me that book
Larry's a great interview.
and autographed it. I suppose it's there somewhere.
Well, remember, he was shot down in '67 in an F4,
I don't see it.
and for 4 years they thought he was dead, so he
Well, then
let
his wife had remarried.
he remarried, divorced him, and then one of the first guys that got released from Vietnam smuggled, and this is what they done, they memorized all the names of every flyer in there. They go over there every day.
Chief Earl was working for me for
Yeah, he
2 or
was
3
good.
years.
I remember that.
Time and time again, when they thought he was dead, he said it would be easier if we knew he was dead. A
But
lot
you
easier.
remember him?
But then when they found he was still alive, well, that was quite a...
Well, and then he came home and
So
finally got remarried and
Yeah.
was on the way to bless his child,
His
got hit
wife
by a
was-
train and killed his wife and his
was
kid.
killed.
That's right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And he became a legislator in
Legislator.
Arizona, he couldn't
Yeah.
take the politics, so he didn't run again.
It's better to be a legislature than.
Yeah, yeah.
Bonnie, you can make the mayor
I
day.
think he knows what he said.
I've interviewed Larry. He's a good interview.
But the thing that amazed me about him was soon after he came back, before he married again, and he gave a talk over the high school. And there wasn't any animosity
Forgiveness.
in his soul at all.
Well,
It's just unbelievable.
I talked to him about all the post-Vietnam stuff, POWs, and he said, if you look behind every story, almost everybody who's making these claims has a financial interest. He said, in the POWs and everything, we need to go find them. Everybody has a financial interest
Yeah.
who's making all these claims. He said,
Well, the way they're still digging over there, the remains, so they found a few bones, they spent millions of dollars trying to identify who's there.
I thought the greatest story of forgiveness
What
was when
idiotic things we do.
he did the field for Brother Holbrook and planted
Well,
the
to keep
wrong
some of my friends
plant.
employed.
Misplanted when he was a kid before
You
he
want
was
to
Vietnam.
talk about idiotic, read what they do with the wild horses.
Well, they're.
40,000 horses were paid pasture
Oh,
on.
here we go.
40,000! Because they won't kill them, or get rid of them, or they won't let them slaughter them. Used to be slaughtered them for, a lot of societies eat horses.
I had horse. Have you ever
We're
had?
actually looking at allowing horse meat back on the market
Are
now.
they?
Very
Because
good
there's
cow.
so many people deserting their horses now
it's a very
because
good
of
cow.
the feed
Yeah,
deals. They're turning them out,
becoming
becoming the range, become wild horses.
They're-
All over Boise's wild horses.
Really?
They have a wild horse roundup every year.
What's that old movie with Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe and
The outcast or something?
it's about herding wild horses and you've never seen that? It's his last movie. You gotta see it.
I read the run where the,
He just heard that Les Mis came out. A couple of weeks ago.
Marilyn Monroe, is she somebody special?
She was a horrible actress.
She had this blowing skirt.
This is her best movie.
I know more about Charles Manson than
Because I don't like any of her other movies.
I think it's fun. Unlike
Eli Wallach.
the one
it's
with
such a
the
great
3
movie.
models, who get that apartment that they keep selling the furniture on when they can't.
Well,
Yeah.
every once in a while, I'll talk to
But they
somebody
weren't wanted to marry.
and they tell me I took them flying, and I have no recollection.
Well, you took Jerry Lister flying.
Yeah.
Jerry Lister, you
That's
took
what
him flying.
Lord
Yeah.
to call.
I spoke in his ward last month. Jerry
Marilyn
Lister's the
Monroe.
bishop.
Really?
You have to
Ward,
watch some.
How
ward
wonderful.
there.
How wonderful.
What's his brother's name?
The one who was the actor?
Dale?
Dale. was
Dale
in the
Lister, the one
play.
that was your age?
Yeah, he was in the play when his parents died or something.
Dale, I saw Dale here a few years ago in the temple.
Wow.
And it is amazing to me, to the upbringing those two boys had, that they're both active in the church.
Well, the good news is that you were in the temple. It's nice that the Listers were
Well,
there.
I met Mr. Goring in the temple in Boise last
you
time.
told
I
me.
did too.
I
The one that used to give me a licking with his paddle all the
used to
time.
smoke, go out and smoke in between classes.
Yeah.
The meanest man in the county, when I got to be assessor, they said it was Matthews. No, wait a minute, what was
Be
his
careful
first
with that
name?
Matthews name.
President Matthews?
Matthews. Hal Matthews' youngest brother.
Why was he the meanest man in the county?
Boy, he's just mean. But anyway, one of the first things I did, I
County
went
assessor, well,
to the county clerk's office, got a list of how many cattle all these cattlemen had. And especially the Matthews and one of them had been, the dad had been county commissioner for a zillion years. And they had the 40 or 50 head of cattle on the tax roll, and they had 500 or 600 or 1,000 or more. And it was that way with all the cattlemen in the county. I went and found out how many they had mortgages on, so I put them on the tax roll. Ennis Matthews. Anyway, so
You are me.
one day I had my whole office full of mad cattlemen.
Mad cowman.
And when they found out they were all getting treated the same way, I diffused it, it was no problem after that, but people said that, Ennis, and he came in one-on-one one day, and he was mad, and I had never met him. But anyway, by the time he laughed, I don't know what I did, but I got him laughing even, But anyway, but then one day I saw him in the Boise Temple in a white suit, and I couldn't believe it. You remember Tony Jolly?
Yep.
Well, Tony Jolly, he get me out of an airplane in $10,000, just slick as a whistle. And one day in Boise Temple, I saw him in a white suit, and I realized that he saw me, but didn't think I saw him, And I saw him,
Hey.
And anyway, when I could finally running down and caught up to him, and he could tell I was actually happy to see him. He couldn't believe it. It was because I was so thrilled to see him, and that he was in the temple in a white suit. But
So repentance doesn't mean you have to pay those little bills.
What about the Clark who, Amos's son, who was he sheriff here?
what?
Amos's son who was sheriff here?
I didn't understand the word.
Was it
Amos's,
Amos's son who was sheriff here in Burley? Who was
Yeah, Sterling was his name.
Sterling, yeah, it's just Sterling.
Well, I want to tell you about that. In fact, I asked one of Amos's sons
Dale?
2 times ago about it. The family knew about that, and they did. But Sterling divorced his first wife, and Amos supported her, unbeknownst to Sterling, all the rest of her life. And the reason I know that is because she was the best friend of my secretary, as assessor, and also
I can't remember.
the Sunday school secretary when I
remember her, but I can't say her name.
what's her name? Anyway, they were close friends, and I didn't know, but I know Sterling never knew it. But apparently the family had learned it. That Amos had supported her all the rest of her life.
I just remember when he came up here to visit his
Did
son.
you remember him?
Sure. Uncle Amos,
I never.
I do. I remember he came up and his son lived down there by down by the fairgrounds somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that where he
He's
lived?
been in this house many times.
And I went down
He
and
sat right at that table and they told us about when he was a
Mark
boy.
Harris? When he
No,
was
and
Mark
you looked at
Harris?
his son, and his son looked like he was older than him.
Yeah, and he told about as a boy meeting
I
Mark
remember
Harris.
reading about him in the church.
Oh, it was on the church news.
He was an original Boy Scout,
Almost.
just.
We're gonna go over to Linda's house.
They had him on the church news when he was 104, riding his bicycle, going to work for the farm.
And his,
I thought he was
inactive
just
son
94
lived in
when he
Burley,
was
Idaho.
35.
Yeah. His inactive son was
Sterling.
So what was his name?
Amos Clark.
And how was he related?
He's
Sterling was in that.
Ezra T's youngest son from the first
He
wife.
looked
So
older
he's
than
an
that.
Great uncle.
uncle.
Great uncle.
I think last time I saw
That's
him,
who I am.
96 or something like that.
His son, the one that died, is the one who was the thinking behind the Peace Corps. He just barely died.
Shriver?
Well, I remember Uncle
Shriver
Elvin
got the
calling
idea
all the
from-
time.
What?
I remember Uncle Elvin calling all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Colin,
Well,
who
Come
you
in and he had that
worked
tote
at,
goat on
right?
the front of his truck and he'd take it off and let us ride his tote goat around.
Dale
I
also
didn't
started
understand
in
what you
Germany.
said.
He had that little tote
Parties
goat,
in Germany.
that little motor
Dale who?
motor
I
scooter.
don't remember that.
Dr. Dale.
That's the first time I ever rode a little
He
motor
told me about
scooter.
meeting Hitler.
And you bought a little
Who
Cushman.
met Hitler? Dale. Dale was Dale loved politics, and he got sent on a mission to Germany in the 30s, and he had this companion who was kind of feisty, and Dale claimed to be a correspondent for the Deseret News, so he went to a Nazi rally and sat on the front row as Hitler came, he said, "Oh, I'm with the Deseret News," and showed him a card, and they let him on the front row, and his companion, who had a little more moxie, got up and sit on the stand right next to Hitler.
Wasn't that wonderful?
Two times he saw him though. He said, "If you loved history, why wouldn't you go see Hitler?" I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It seemed like Dale was talked about meeting the Pope. And,
Who's this?
Dale, Amos's son.
Yeah, okay.
And the Night of Thieves. He calls it the Night of Thieves. When power changes, from one country to another, like what's happening in Egypt. He was a diplomat all these years, and he was a Roosevelt favorite. Not Roosevelt, but who's the governor? Rockefeller. Rockefeller loved him. And he started the idea for the Peace Corps. And,
So how did Shriver take it from him?
no, it was Dale been pushing this idea from a Mormon missionary. He had all kinds of plans for you, John.
Who did?
Dale wanted you to go to Iran and meet with all the academics there. He said that's what they want from us as a church. They want academics and learning. They want somebody like Elwin who can go teach a trade.
We just send Dan Peterson, he can just take
Oh boy.
I see by the paper today that there's a bunch of Latinos, Salt Lake have sent a petition to the President of Mexico
This last week they handed it in.
to
Yeah.
not let, give them visas.
Suspend all the visas. Suspend all the visas.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have to worry about that. I may not be able to get it back in to work.
We'll smuggle you in.
It's hard to smuggle John. He doesn't look like, he kind of has gringo written on him.
They think I'm German.
Do they?
Yeah, they thought.
Does that work to your advantage?
Better than America, maybe.
We can roll them in a carpet.
Well, John, I brought
They don't expect Americans to speak Spanish. So if you
So if you do,
Yeah.
you think you're European.
Yeah.
you can't be American because you're.
I get Italian in Spain.
Do you?
So what country?
I have a couple
is it?
guns that people have asked me to bring so you can take down to them.
Yeah, when we were down there, I had
Is
a
that gonna
couple
be
times
tough?
asked if we
Well,
were German.
I spent a year and a half trying to get him some drug smuggling airplanes.
Some of his friends from Michigan told a story about going to Mexico and the man died.
Obviously,
And
I got.
there's so much difficulty bringing the body back. You wrap the body in a carpet and put it on top of the car. And as they're going through
My father was.
customs, they have to get out of the car and somebody stole the carpet.
Somebody what?
The carpet had a
Somebody
dead
stole
body
the
in
carpet
it.
that had the body in it. Lynn was telling that story. I don't know how you make up stuff like that.
Lynn who?
What was Lynn's last name? Where's Cindy? Who was Lynn Hansel's name before she was a Hansel? She's from Michigan.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
They know Lynn.
they know Lynn. She knew Lynn.
Right, I remember that.
See,
now.
Feldkamp.
Yeah.
It's one thing to run into, are you Charles Clark's brother? It's another thing to run in, are you John Clark's brother?
Yeah.
Well, we've told you the story when the first year we went to Mexico, we had to go to Guatemala to renew our visas because they got 6 months and so we were close to Guatemala, so we went down there. And we've been going around and we stopped at this little Quetzaltenango, and we stopped at this little store just to buy some snack food. And there were these two women there, one was older and one was younger, and they were two Mormon missionaries. They were there waiting for the bus to go back out to their little village where they stayed for 1 or 2 weeks before they came back. And she came up to John and said, "Are you Anton Clark's brother?"
Are you serious?
You had dated her at Rick's.
Oh, really?
He was quite popular there. We heard that the other night. He was the man at Rick's, I heard.
It ought to happen to you once. I mean,
I'm on this little place in
you're in this remote spot and somebody comes up and says, are you Charles Clark's brother?
I just heard he was the man at Rick's, I heard, the popular good looking one.
One guy, my bishop was out in the Okamora pageant, and he heard somebody talk, and he went over to Charles, "You've got to be Gordon's brother."
What is it? It's the tone of the sweetness not coming out of your mouth. It's just such a common thread.
I mean, in the middle of the Okamora pageant.
John, I just finished reading the Book of Mormon again a couple, 3 or 4 days ago. I started it first, anyway. in there in,
Put on your scholar.
in the battle where, the last battle where Mormon,
All
there's 14 of them died with their 10,000.
With
Right.
their 10,000.
Right.
That's the soldiers. Plus, they, on the Nephi side, they had their women and children, right? So I figured there's between 400,000 and 500,000 people died in that battle.
Right.
Is that the figure you come up with?
Sure.
Between 400,000 and 500,000.
And that's no
Now,
archaeological-
the way it
Throw
indicates,
in
it
the
says
land.
that on the morrow, you beheld, well, I think that on the morrow really means at the end of the battle. I don't think that that battle took just one day. I don't think they could possibly kill that many people in one day. I think that on the morrow means at the end of the battle, because all the other battles they describe would be several days.
Yeah.
Several days long. So anyway, when I read that on the morrow, I thought, well, no, that can't mean,
We as
you
plural.
know, that they all died in one day.
That's
Because
the-
when the Jaredites, for example, when they killed each other all, it took several days to get down to 24 or 36
Took
or
about 4
38,
years.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think that battle took quite a while.
Oh, it had to. It couldn't have been done in one day, because all these different armies, you know,
I mean,
Tecumseh,
well, you know, in World War II, when they, well, the Civil War, at Battle of Gettysburg, they killed 20,000 people in a few minutes. There was something like that.
Anybody want a jelly bean?
But, and you think of the World War II battles.
Just the black ones for you, David. I hate the black ones.
Any battles in our life, is nothing compared to some of the battles they had. Nothing as far as the
Well,
tragedy.
that's why people don't believe it, because
Goes your way.
it's never happened.
you look at
The one thing that's kind of hard to
People that died in the
it
Civil
tells
War.
sound like they got all killed off, and pretty soon they're spreading over the land again. You know,
It's that open border with Central America, that just
So
keeps
John,
pouring in.
can I get, as part of your state map of the Hill Cumorah lands?
What's
You
that?
know, I want the map that you submitted to the church of the Hill Cumorah, of the.
I have it.
Yes, I would like a copy of that. And I will market it throughout the
could
church.
you get a passport to have
Usually
them?
it's black or blue.
Well, when you think about the great battles in the Book of Mormon, and you talk about Civil War, you think about the mentality that some of the generals had to have. One of the reasons the Union had such a problem is because their generals got too attached to the troops, they couldn't stand to see them killed. General Grant Lincoln says, "I'm finally glad I got a guy who knows how to fight." Because when he lost 24,000 men in one battle, he says, "Well, tomorrow will be a better day." And what'd he do? When they advanced on him, they burned the bridges behind him so he couldn't retreat. I mean, his own people, so they had to go forward.
So Gordon, who's buried, who's in Grant's tomb then?
My Mormon was appointed chief of the army at 15 years old or 16. Do you think it was hereditary or
Thank
something?
you for the editing process.
I wonder if it wasn't hereditary.
His dad was the general.
You like, I think you like black too, don't you?
Oh, do you? Oh, okay. Well, he's trying to get all the black ones away.
We have cake and ice cream at our house.
Yeah, we-
The golf cart blues. Sometimes there's two. In the front yard. One for him and one for her. But lately, we don't know where her is anymore.
Oh, my. El Caballero con tennis shoes. Welcome to the Heiner Estate.
Get a little football games in here.
Where'd you get the nice jackets?
Oh, these are tailored by us, by a local Burley tailor.
Burley, just across the river, hey, just across the river, that river location where you can go in. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Grandma, happy birthday to you. Should we sing for Tanya? We wish a happy birthday to you, we wish a happy birthday to you, and when you blow the candles out, then all of us will shout, a happy birthday, a happy birthday, a happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Kneel before your king. You're gonna do it.
Bring on the roof here. I wanted to see you make that toy airplane and blow it up. Gordon was playing with the helicopter before you arrived. A mechanical helicopter. Dad's got some on his nose because they hit him in the nose.
Good heavens.
Unusual, thank you.
Yes, thanks for stepping out of character, Dennis.